Salute, welcome to Wake Up the Black Nation. I am your brother, your minister, Richmond X, signing on. And on today's broadcast, I will be interviewing Chairman Omali Yeshitela, founder of the African Socialist Party. Chairman Omali, I hear the word revolution and revolutionary thrown around loosely in the black conscious community. What exactly is a revolutionary?
Well, I think that's a really important observation that you've just made, that it is something that's thrown about quite mostly the term revolution and revolutionary. And in the final analysis, what we see, especially right now, is that there are people who are engaged in all kinds of motion, very busy, and unfortunately, too many instances from behind computer screens, they have become social media militants. But the question that we have to ask is toward what ends? Like the work that we're engaged in, whether it's to free this person or that person, or whether it's around responding to the murders of people like Trayvon, toward what end? And as we understand it, that we have to be talking about dealing with the social system that's responsible for our conditions of existence as a people here and around the world. So revolution for us is overturning a social system, and complete overturning of a social system. I hear people from time to time that say that revolution means change, but that's not sufficient. You can have a caterpillar that changes, that grows from a small caterpillar to a large caterpillar, but revolution means transformation, overturning a social system. When that caterpillar turns into a butterfly, it's a completely new thing altogether. That's what we're talking about. And revolutionary is someone who engages in an organized struggle to overturn an existing social system or social condition that afflicts our people and oppressed people any place on earth.
Could you explain what imperialism is?
Well, imperialism is a word that comes from the term empire. And empire is when you have a system, a state, a government of people living at the expense of another people that's held in some form of captivity. And this is where the term imperialism derived from the word empire. And over a period of time, and particularly in the early 20th century, there's a lot of debate going on, mostly in Europe, about what imperialism is, what constitutes imperialism. But that serves us pretty well. It is a situation where a whole people experiences being dominated, our value that we create expropriated by another system, another government, another people, a foreign and alien entity dominates our existence. And that, in fact, is the fundamental contradiction that it reflects itself in most of the world that we are aware of as colonialism. And that is what we have to be engaged in doing. Otherwise, what we find ourselves doing is every time a horrific incident such as that of a Trayvon Martin reaches the media, or an Oscar Grant reaches the media, then we find ourselves reacting to these things incident by incident. So we're saying that the whole system of imperialism must be overturned. That imperialism is not a bad policy. It is a system itself, and that is what we have to be engaged in struggling against.
Yes, sir. Many of the African brothers and sisters living in America, they feel like we have arrived, in the word revolution and imperialism, that sounds foreign to them. They see LeBron James signing these $100 million contracts. They see a black face in the White House. How far have black people really came in this country, Chairman?
Well, I hear that often, that many people think that we have arrived, but I don't think that's true. I don't think many people think we've arrived. I think the data clearly demonstrate just the opposite. I think that there was a momentary sort of delirium that affected our community, not only in the United States, but Africans throughout the world, with the selection of Barack Hussein Obama as President of the United States. That there was this false assumption that a black face in this office would went after all the data, simply argued against it. Africans, as opposed to white people, saw the future as being quite bright. But I think that increasingly more and more people having to deal with the reality that we experience on the ground, that this form of idealism, this delirium around the Obama election is being tempered by what it is that we experience in the world. And what we experience in the world, particularly in this country, is the fact that something like the white income, wealth in this country is 22 times greater than the wealth of Africans in this country, and that living in a country with the largest prison population in the world, we have a situation where something like half of those people who are in prison are Africans, and if Africans and Mexicans were arrested at the same rate that white people are arrested in this country, would cut the prison population in half. I don't know of an African who does not have a relative or know somebody who's in prison or been to prison. And it's going worse. It's getting worse and worse every day. In fact, since something like 1980, I think the prison population has tripled, and with huge numbers of Africans being shoved into the prisons. We're not being able to work. We're facing not only mass incarceration, but execution in the streets by an array of forces, some of them tied directly to the government, others like George Zimmerman simply act in the interest of the government. So I think that's really part. I think that the masses of our people are being affected by this. I think that's why we see the kind of response in our community, a rather spontaneous response to the Trayvon Martin situation. If it were something that happened infrequently, if it didn't represent the reality that we're confronted with most of the time, it wouldn't have got that kind of response from African people. But the fact that African people were in motion is because it is something that's happening too much, and Africans are tired of it. So I'm not sure it's absolutely clear. I'm not sure that the majority of Africans actually think we have made it. I do think that this is an interesting political moment that we in the process of exiting, in my view, where we have a handful of Negroes like Obama, like the highly paid athletes and entertainers who in some ways flaunt wealth, resources, and without any obvious consciousness of the plight of African people in general. But as far as the majority of Africans, certainly from my experience and from the experiences that of organizers who we deal with on a day-to-day basis, there's no illusion about having made it in this country. There may be some confusion now about what to do. In fact, there is some confusion about what to do. How do we deal with this situation? But I don't think there's any illusion that we've made it.
What is your advice to brothers and sisters that want to do for self? Because the black community is not providing us with jobs.
No. And the community can only do what the most advanced sector of the community will lead us to. And I think that it's a question of organization. I think that without organization, we're helpless. When we are simply prey to be fed, to feed the appetites, the avaricious appetites of our oppressors. But we know that it can be different. It can be better. I mean, we've seen the examples, particularly of the Garvey movement. But the Garvey movement was not simply a collection of individuals. It was an organization that was designed for the liberation of our people, our nation that's dispersed all around the world. And we have to be engaged in a nation-building process. And that means that we have to come into organization with the liberation of the African nation dispersed around the world at its center. And when you talk about national liberation, you have to be talking about economics, because the economic self-reliance is the foundation upon which an independent nation will rest. And this speaks to the kind of organization that we have to have as well, and the kind of program that we have to have, because it is our view that it is organization program that is led essentially by the African working class that has been was every time there has been struggle any place in this country, whether it was the civil rights movement, whether it was in the slave plantation, whether it was on the continent of Africa, any place else, has always been the African workers who've been the forces that led the struggle, certainly that played a primary role in the struggle, although the workers have been the ones who benefited less as a consequence of the struggle. So the Martin Luther Kings and the Jesse Jacksons and the Al Sharptons and the whole host of people have always been able to call on the workers, call on the people. When they say the people, they're talking about a population that's predominantly workers. But it is not the workers who end up benefiting from this, and certainly not from the Jesse Jacksons and the Al Sharptons. I think that King did have a program that was designed to deal with poor people. I think that's part of what contributed to this government executing, assassinating him. But that's what we have to have. We have to really see that the key element to any kind of success in terms of building a new society where human beings can be treated like human beings, where the dignity of human labor is something that is respected, is going to have to be under the leadership of the African working class.
In America, several news reports have said that nearly 1/4 of Americans are having trouble putting food on the table. And black people are struggling the most from this hunger crisis. Recent cuts to welfare have put even more African men, women, and children at risk of going hungry. What must be done to end the hunger issue in America and the rest of the world?
Well, the people are hungry not because of an absence of resources of food. People are hungry because of the economic and social organization of the world, and it is the world that owes its political and economic configuration to slavery and colonialism. So even when you talk about all the hunger in the world, when you look at the data, this is one of the arguments we have against the so-called Occupy Wall Street movement, that where you have white kids who lost their student loans and older people whose retirement funds are being threatened, characterizing themselves as part of the 99%. The truth of the matter is that the world that we live in, 50% of the people on Earth, 50%, not in the United States, but on Earth, try to survive off less than $3 a day. And you've got a total of something like 80% of the people on the planet Earth trying to survive off $10 or less a day. So that's the vast majority of people on this Earth. And you got the mostly white, and increasingly you have entities like Japan and some other Asian, but mostly white, mostly European. The 20%, this 20% of the population is hogging up most of the resources in the world. And this is under capitalist colonialism. This is what imperialism is all about. So there is no shortcut to overturning this situation. There are certain kinds of things that we can do in the process of making revolution and overturning the social system that might offer some kinds of temporary reforms. But it's only meaningful if we understand that it has to be a part of a reform on the way to revolution, on the way to overturning the social system. Otherwise, we find ourselves helping to repair or perfect the system of oppression as opposed to getting rid of oppression altogether. Now, part of what we've done, for example, a movement in Sierra Leone has been engaged in things like rainwater harvesting and like food production. We have situations where we've contributing to maternal and infant mortality success, rather overturning infant and maternal mortality rates that some of the highest in the world there. And in a place like Sierra Leone that has some of the richest diamonds in the world and other resources as well, but where the people who bring those diamonds out of the earth try to survive off something like 32 cents and a cup of rice. They don't have clean water. They don't have an electrical grid. So we're doing farming and other kinds of things collectively. The government can't do it because the government is an appendage of the empire of imperialism. It serves imperialism and not the people. In this country, through some of the same organizational forms that we've created, we do things like try to do collective farming, gardening, throughout the various communities that we live in backyards, and we try to anything else, I believe, is to help people come to an understanding that we have to have a collective solution to this problem of food, to this problem of having what it is that we need to survive. Otherwise, we go out as individuals and sometimes end up attacking our own interests, attacking each other as a means of trying to survive in this system. But I want to point out that the basic thing that I'm talking about, the basic point that I would make, is that there are no shortcuts, and that Africans are going to have to come to the same conclusions that most people have come to in the process of trying to change their relationship to the systems of poverty, to oppression, and that is revolution. Organization, revolution. There is no individual, let me take that back. I almost said there is no individual solution, but sometimes there is an individual solution. Sometimes the system will allow for certain individuals to succeed, but they will not allow the group to succeed, not allow the masses of our people to succeed. And in most instances, an individual that succeeds will do so at the expense, and the system will not only allow, will promote it, success at the expense of the group. And that's unacceptable.
Salute. You have just heard part 1 of my interview with brother Chairman Omali Yeshitela, founder of the African People's Socialist Party. Part 2 coming soon, so stay tuned. UHURU.